let's get into that. Welcome back to Davie Jones Locker. I'm Davie Jones, and today we're making an homage video towards one of my absolute favorite YouTube channels, Binging with Babish. Mr. Andrew Wright does fantastic work. I'm completely a big fan of the show, and he has inspired me to cook a lot of stuff. So today I'm going to be making a Southwest style chili using chicken. And a Southwest chicken chili, more or less, we have our chicken, we have all of our accoutrements, and anybody who knows that we have to have an assortment of stuff. So we have our dark meat, which is where all of our flavor obviously comes from. It's a little bit more oily, and we're hoping it's going to break down a little bit more. And then we're going to have our white meat that we're going to actually keep in larger chunks to make it survive the entire cooking process. That way, at the end, you still have large chunks of meat in your chili. But like I said, flavor from one side and the chicken to show at the end, more or less. So being that we're running with that, we're going to go with the Holy Trinity that you're probably familiar with from Cajun cooking, where I'm going to cut up some celery as small as possible, and then it's going to disintegrate more or less. We've got some red onion, one of my personal favorite onions, and we have green bell pepper. And the bell pepper, once again, I'm going to cook it as small as possible, take the top and the bottom off and clear the insides out, and it's just going to disintegrate in our chili. So I'm all kinds of excited about this. Our chicken is very lean, so I'm going to be adding a little bit of fat by using a thick cut bacon, and it turns out very well. I've done this before. This one happens to be all the stuff that you can get at your local Walmart. So enjoy. First things first, we have to chop our vegetables. So cutting the celery as small as possible is going to help it to cook down and leave more or less just the flavor. Now, you don't have to go super crazy. This is plenty small enough, because like I said, it will cook down. Next, we need to top and bottom our green peppers and remove the insides. By the time we separate all this out and slice everything down, we'll have a nice little pile just like this, which we want to spear and then turn at a 90-degree angle and chop into more or less cubes. This is once again to help it cook down into smaller pieces. So go ahead and set that off to the side. Grab yourself a red onion, top and bottom this as well. Divide it down the center and dice. I like to leave slivers instead of truly dicing. So a good chopped onion, you want to make sure you separate. Go ahead and add it to your little strainer here. I do this to keep everything dry. Looking at our pot here, our pot is nice, but it's kind of on the small side, so I'm gonna push that one off to the side for right now. We're gonna pull out the big stew pot, and as you can see, this thing is about 40% taller, and it holds quite a bit more. We're gonna definitely need the extra volume for this particular recipe. First thing to go in is a very large quantity of garlic. I use just your typical spoon. Think like 1 or 2 heaping spoonfuls of it. Go ahead and drop that right in the pot. And the next thing we're going to do is grab an entire stick of butter and cut it in half. Throw 1/2 a stick of butter in the pot. All we're really going to do is brown it. So, in the pot it goes. Put it on the stove. Set your heat for medium-high, because we want to get a little bit of that browning. Once we get a little bit melty and a little browny, give it a good mix. And at this point, we want to add our vegetable mix, our base. Once we have this together, we want to give it a good stir. Make sure everything is pretty well coated in the brown butter, and add some broth of some sort. I used a bone broth, beef broth. And I want to use about half a container's worth of this. This is just enough to help it cook down with, add a little bit of flavor, soften up some of the vegetables. Go ahead and set our lid on top. We want to put our lid on. And the next thing we want to do is bring out the tomatoes and the corn and the kidney beans. I happen to go for a southwestern corn here and a fire roasted corn just because it was available. Now drain the beans. In case he likes beans. And we want to take this and do a little Babish lift and walk off. Rinse them off real good. Throw our corn in there with it. And then add that to the pot. Give it a good stir first. And then combine all of these ingredients. Once you've combined, go ahead and give it another good stir. Oh wait, we almost forgot tomatoes. Can of diced tomatoes. Voila, open in an instant. Go ahead and drop that in the pot. Give it a good stir. We're going to let that cook down for a little bit while we prepare our chicken. As you can see, we're obviously working with some dark meat. Those are breasts on the right and thighs on the left. We want to take these thighs and we want to chop them down into smaller pieces. We want them to fall apart and release a lot of their oils. Now the breast meat we want to cut into large chunks. This way we have something that holds up against the entire cooking process. So take your dark meat and chunk it in relatively decently small pieces. And once you've got all that chopped down, go ahead and set it all off to the side. I'm just going to cut it down and set it right back on the same plate actually. And you take your breasts. Now these, like I said, you don't want to go too small on these. You want it to hold up. You want big pieces of meat at the end of the cooking process when everything's broken down. So we're more or less just going to quarter these big giant pieces of white meat to hold up against the extra heat. As you can see, quite a bit larger than the dark meat. Oh, I almost forgot. We need to add a can of tomato paste. And presto changeo, we have that open, hold, walk off. Add this to your pot. Obviously give it a good stir almost every chance you get. And then you want to mix this and get it evenly distributed throughout the mixture. At this point we want to add all of our meat and our bacon, which I forgot to take the video of. And we start adding our seasonings. So I'm going with a chipotle chili powder, a freshly ground sea salt, freshly ground black pepper, and cumin. Cumin is one of those ones that you want to be really heavy-handed with. In my opinion, this is the most important. This is what gives chili the chili flavor in my mind. I also did put a sprinkling of bay leaf in there. So now that we've got everything all situated and mixed together, leave a gap. It's going to be cooking for a while, so we might as well do a little ode to Mr. Babish himself. I'm going with a young Lefroy. Cheers. Delicious, smoky. Goes right along with the entire idea of a Southwest blend. So this has been cooking for a while now. We went just like this, a low simmer, almost like a really low boil. Go ahead and give it a good mix. You can start to see it's been about 2 hours, I want to say. Things are breaking down, and then just the texture looks amazing. And the more you cook it, the more it'll mixed together, and it always tastes better the second day. So keep cooking it until you get the consistency you want. If it's a little too watery, cook it some more. We'll grab a little bowl here, because everything in my house is orange. And it's absolutely gorgeous. Look at the meat, it falls apart just with a spoon. Give it a little sample here. Delicious. Absolutely spectacular. Absolutely amazing. Big chunks of chicken in there. Oh, I just can't stop. I can't help myself at this point. Oh, it's so good. This is where I actually burnt my mouth. A little too hot. So here's me blowing on it. Oh, it's so good. This turned out really, really well. Here's a good close-up shot. Big chunks of chicken. And you can see how the bell peppers have disintegrated in it. The celery is no longer solid. The shredded chicken in there from the dark meat having broken down. Obviously the corn holds up really well. This is just one of those things that's fantastic. You can cook an entire pot of it for a whole lot of people for really inexpensive, and you bet your ass it went in the Clean Plate Club. And now it's time to relax. I want to take this moment to thank Mr. Andrew Ray for all of his inspiration. Cheers, sir. And for all of you watching, if you really enjoyed this, feel free to subscribe. Let me know what you think. Should I do like the Babish thing and just...